I've spent entire mornings on hold with the state just trying to get one question answered about a form and still come away worried that I messed something up somewhere in the process. If you are autistic or otherwise neurodivergent, you might know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not the support itself that's the hardest. It's everything that you have to do just to access it. The making the phone calls, trying to explain yourself to a stranger, filling out forms that don't really make sense, and keeping up with deadlines while you are already overwhelmed. Now, I have spent more time stuck on hold with offices and staring at forms than actually getting help from those systems. And when you struggle with that part, people act like it means that you're irresponsible or you don't really need the help.
And if we haven't met before, hi, I'm Alicia Trotwine. I am an autistic mom of 4 children, 3 who are also autistic. And around here, we talk about everything autism and the systems that we live within. So you're talking from schools to diagnosis to parenting to navigating life as an autistic adult. Now, I am an autism advocate, a speaker, and a writer. And everything that I share here comes from personal experience and conversations that I've had with families just like yours. So if you're ready for practical, easy to understand help along your autism journey, you're in the right place.
When people hear bureaucracy, they think of a big, vague system. What it actually looks like in your life, though, is a pile of very specific, very annoying tasks. It's that packet of forms that shows up in the mail and needs to be filled out by a certain date, or your services stop. Or it's that letter that says, please call this number to verify your information. And you're already filled with dread because you know that that call is going to take forever and you're likely to freeze up once somebody answers. Then there's the paperwork that comes back saying, well, we didn't get your paperwork when you know that you sent it. But now you have to find the right person, resend everything, and explain the whole story all over again. Now, for a lot of neurodivergent people, none of those tasks are simple. Each one is a bunch of hidden steps. Noticing the letter, opening it, understanding what it actually wants, figuring out what information that you need, finding that information, and then either filling it in or getting on the phone to ask questions. And by the time that you've worked out what they're even asking for, you've already spent energy most people don't see. And the system, it doesn't count any of that as effort. It only counts whether you've hit the deadline exactly the way that they asked. Now, most bureaucratic systems were built with a specific kind of person in mind, even if no one says that out loud. They assume that you can keep track of dates without any help. Remember which forms are due when, and notice that reminder letter before it gets buried in a stack of mail. On top of that, you're expected to just pick up the phone, sit on hold for an hour, and still sound calm and clear when a stranger finally answers and says, how can I help you? And they build everything around the idea that you can read vague, slightly repetitive questions and just know what they're really asking for, even when they use almost the same words twice and expect you to be able to read between the lines. That's a lot of executive function. They're expecting you to juggle all those steps in your head and remember a ton of detail while destroying your social battery for the day. If you are autistic, ADHD, or otherwise neurodivergent, those are often the exact skills that take the most time and energy for you. Now, you might be completely capable of managing your money, parenting kids, or handling your health, but the way that these systems are set up ask you to jump through hoops that were never designed with your brain in mind. So if you keep getting stuck, that doesn't mean you're lazy or failing. It usually just means that the way this whole process is set up doesn't match how your brain actually works. For some people, the hardest part of the entire process is the phone calls. Needing to call a doctor's office or a state agency can make your chest feel tight with anxiety before you even pick up the phone. For many of us, we script out what we're going to say, even practicing the exact words out loud so that we don't get stuck. Then the call actually happens. Now, with modern tech, you're likely forced to deal with a talking AI system that doesn't understand you, pressing buttons and just trying to reach a real person to talk to. Your brain is already overwhelmed. Now, maybe you get through your name and the main reason for your call, but then they ask you a question that you weren't ready for. Your mind, it goes blank and your body floods with panic. And for some, that means freezing and not being able to get any other words out. For others, it's shaking or suddenly crying in the middle of the call. From the outside, for many, it looks like just a phone call. But on the inside, for you, it's a full body stress response in a situation where you're just trying your best to sound calm and put together to someone who has the power over whether that you get the resource or not that you need to survive. That's why treating phone calls like something you need tools for, not something that you should power through, can make a huge difference. So before your next call, write out a short script, your name, your date of birth, any ID numbers you're going to need, and one simple sentence about why you're calling. Now keep that piece of paper in front of you in case your mind goes blank. That way you have something to read instead of trying to drag words out of nowhere. And whenever possible, bring in support. Ask a partner, a friend, or a family member to just sit with you while you make the call. They can help you stay grounded, keep track of what's being said, and if you do freeze up or start to shut down, they can help step in for you. And for others, the problem isn't the phone call, it's the forms and the follow-up. So say you get a form in the mail that you need to fill out for your benefits. So you sit down to fill it out, but the questions are really vague and they don't match how you think. Now, a benefit form might ask you to describe the impact on daily life, and then a few lines later ask you to list any limitations. But for you, when you filled out that previous question, you already listed your limitations, or you aren't really sure what they consider a limitation. Now, another example would be like a medical form that might say something like, how often does this happen? And then say, how severe is it? But they give you checkboxes with numbers or descriptions that don't really fit what you experience, and there's no place further on the form to explain what you mean. Now, of course, you do your best. You guess what they're trying to get at, but you're still left hoping that it was the correct information that they were wanting. But then the agency or that doctor's office, they calls or emails to verify a few things. And suddenly you're on the spot trying to remember what you wrote and why you chose those answers. And now you're stuck trying to answer quickly, second guessing yourself. And by the time that call ends, you feel like you messed everything up, even if no one said that to you. So one thing that helps is to break packets and forms into tiny chunks. Instead of, I have to finish this whole thing, try, I'm going to answer a few questions up front, or maybe I'll fill out the top half and come back tomorrow. That still counts as progress. And then also put reminders on your phone as soon as that letter or email comes in. Don't wait until later. And when it comes to forms that you filled out, if all possible, make a copy of it. Whether you have a printer that can scan stuff or even your phone, take a picture of it so that when you do get a phone call like that, you can refer back and just say, this is the form, this is what they're talking about, this is what I answered, and you can read your own answers to see what you were thinking about to then go from there. Just little steps like that can definitely make the process a lot easier. And another area that a lot of people find really exhausting is just the back and forth that keeps things from falling apart. So what I mean by that is you're told, we'll send you a letter, and it shows up late or not at all, according to how your mail is. So you're checking the mail, or maybe you're checking some online portal, just wondering if somehow you missed a deadline that you never saw. Or for other times, it could be something like just logging in online, but their websites are confusing, it times out, or maybe even locks you out, even though you're sure you typed in the password right. And by the time that you finally get in, you're mentally done for the day. And on top of all that, there's the follow-up that you're expected to do on your own. Now, you might hear a phrase like, if you don't hear from us, call back, or if this doesn't go through, reach out again. And every single reminder, every just check in, it lives in your head until you build some sort of system around it. And you can spend hours checking mail, fighting websites, sitting on hold, and honestly, no one sees any of that. So by the time that someone that's human actually picks up the phone and says, hey, how can I help you? All they see is the one form that was late or the one step that got missed. And then the story becomes, you didn't follow through instead of, this would drain anyone, especially a neurodivergent brain. So in the comments, tell me which part of that hits you the hardest right now. Is it the phone calls, the forums, and keeping up with all that follow-ups and deadlines? That's what I'll use to decide what to walk through in a future video. Now, for someone on the outside of all this doesn't come across as struggling with bureaucracy. All they see is a form that never got sent back, a call that never got returned, or paperwork that wasn't renewed on time. People just see that end result, the missed deadline, the closed case, a benefit that stopped, and they turn it into a story about who you are, that you're flaky or disorganized, that you're not responsible enough, or maybe you just really didn't need the support in the first place. But when you take a step back, what you actually see is a person who opened the letter, who felt overwhelmed and still tried. Someone who filled out a form as best they could, even when it didn't make sense. And then someone who spent the entire morning on hold, who got through that stressful call and still walked away unsure of if they even did it right. So that's not a lack of effort. That's someone doing extra work just to get to the starting line. For neurodivergent people, bureaucracy ends up being a test of how well you can act like a neurotypical person under pressure, trying to keep everything straight, stay calm on the phone, and never ever miss a step. And when you can't do that on top of everything else you're carrying, it gets read as a character problem instead of a problem with how the system is built. So what can you change? Well, you can't single-handedly make government offices, insurance companies, or school systems suddenly become autism friendly. And honestly, it's not your job to fix their process. What you can do, though, is to stop treating your struggle with this stuff as proof that you're lazy or bad with adulting. Struggling with calls, forms, and deadlines isn't proof that you don't care. It just means that you are trying to run a neurodivergent brain through a maze that was never built with you in mind. Bureaucratic tasks, let's face it, they are heavy lifts and not quick errands to do. A 2-minute call on paper can wipe you out for the rest of the morning in real life. And filling out a form, it can take all that you have to focus on that day. That follow-up email that you're supposed to send real quick, well, that might cost you an hour of emotional regulation afterwards. And none of that is a character flaw. It's just what happens when your brain is doing extra work at every step just to navigate a system that assumes that you don't think, process, and recover like a neurotypical person would. So when you plan for that, instead of expecting yourself to breeze through it, you're already being kinder to your nervous system. So if this sounds familiar to you, those hours on hold, the forms that never feel clear, the dread every time a new envelope shows up, it's not because you're lazy or bad at the adulting. It's just because you're trying to get help from systems that were never designed with you in mind. So for this week, I want you to pick one bureaucratic thing that you've been avoiding and just shrink it down into the smallest possible steps. That might be writing out a short script for a call, answering only a few questions on a form, or just setting a reminder in your phone for a deadline instead of trying to keep track of it all in your brain. And that one small move, it can make a huge difference. Now, if you want more support with navigating autism, ADHD, and all the systems wrapped around them, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't have to keep figuring this out alone.